UTL. You remained as a shareholder in Posta and the Ministry of Finance, keeping, I think, some shares. That is why you're here before us today. Some of these things might be quite old. You may not have the institutional memory, but perhaps you'll write to us later on as a committee with further details of some of the issues or some of the questions that will arise, because I know some things happened in 1999 when these entities were sharing assets in the statutory instrument and all that. So why you're here today is to explain to this committee and give us information for majorly information purposes on what exactly is happening. As a committee, we are trying to look for ways on how we can save Posta Uganda Limited, because you know it's struggling and we need it as a country. We need to find all possible means. Some of the things, I don't know if you've interacted as a shareholder, you've been taking keen interest in their performance over the last few years, how they are doing and all that. So these are some of the things that you'll be explaining to us. I don't know if you have any written memoranda, but I've tried to note down some of the few things. I can present them to you, and maybe you can try your level best to answer as much as you can. Those that you cannot, you'll get back to the committee on a later date. And we are grateful that you've come on such a short notice, and hopefully when we do invite you, you'll come back again. One of the issues is concerning the payment of share capital on the investment. As a shareholder, have you paid up your part of the share capital that is required? Because Posta is struggling financially, and one of the reasons is because the shareholders have failed to meet their obligation. They have shares that they did not pay for, so the company does not have share capital. The second one, as the Ministry of ICT, do you do checks and balances to see how Posta is performing and how things have been moving, or you're less involved given that you're a minority shareholder? Are you involved? Do you follow what is happening? Because in one of the interactions that we had yesterday with UCC, we were told they actually have a license that expired. And as we speak now, Posta Uganda is operating illegally in the country, because without them paying their annual subscription fee and getting their license renewed, then they are working illegally. Are you aware of this? And what have you been able to do as the ministry? Over the last 3 years, UPL has consistently increased board remunerations. They have been increasing, and in our interaction with them, we were told that they do not determine their remunerations. It is you, the ministry, that decides on how they are supposed to be paid. And there has been an increment over the last 3 years. Yet they are not doing well. They actually have overdrafts, so they are borrowing money to increase their own salaries. Are you aware of this, and what have you been doing? Is it true that it is you who has kept on increasing their remunerations? Then about the challenges, what other challenges has Posta been having apart from the financials? What other challenges are you aware of? What is happening in Posta? Because failing to renew a license, it's not only monetary. Yes, the money might be a lot, but about $50,000 over a period of 5 years, I would find that something minimal for a big company like Posta Uganda. So what other challenges, apart from maybe the financials, is Posta facing? As a ministry, what has been your role in resolving the conflict in asset sharing between UPL and UET, Uganda Telecommunication? What has been your role? Because over the years, there has been an issue concerning the assets. This one says you're in my territory, this one you're in my territory, and because there are assets that were given to each entity, but there are those that were supposed to be shared by the two entities according to the way they were divided in the statutory declaration. So what have you been able to do to resolve this conflict? When you say, for example, when you look at Kampala Road, that property, now Posta is saying even the entire parking lot, the other parking lot was taken. Uganda Telecom has got a land title that reaches up to their veranda. the veranda of the building in which they are operating. When you go up country, there are very many challenges. Right now, they are having issues concerning rent because one is a tenant of the other on some of the properties, but they have failed to pay because there have been issues concerning asset sharing. There was a petition by the tenants to the Ministry of ICT, and you advised that they go slow on the tenants. I think I have one of the letters from written. I'll share it with you. You advised that they go slow, probably because of COVID, because most of the challenges were there even before COVID, but this was after COVID. You advised to go slow on the tenants, and they find ways of handling it, but they shouldn't demand the tenants what they owed to Posta. What informed this decision, and don't you think it has been having a huge impact on the performance of Posta, because they have a lot in rent receivables that they are demanding out there? In case they were to get this money, it would maybe help revive this entity. There have been concerns concerning price regulations. These allegations were made by the board. Though UCC does most of these regulations, maybe you can also tell us if you are aware of this and the impact it has done as the ministry. They claim that they cannot charge certain fees for certain services because they are regulated by UCC. So as the ministry, are you aware of this, and how best have you come out to help? All these are false allegations. Over time, we've seen postal services transform because people no longer use so much the letters that we grew up writing and doing this and that. So are you aware of this transformation, and as a shareholder, have you come up to advise Posta Uganda on how best they can make profits and survive? Because most of the postal services, the US Postal Service, Australia, the UK, they are now more of logistics companies because people prefer buying online and moving goods using transporters to move these goods. Posta has the facilities, they have the property where they can store these goods. As a shareholder, have you taken keen interest in this, and do you think this perhaps is the way to go for Posta in order to make some profits? Yeah, when you look at the other entities like UTL, government has come in on several occasions to find ways of helping them. When you see UBC, it was bailed out and given some facilitation, but it's not the case for Posta. Was it deliberate or an omission? What exactly is happening? Because they claim other government entities that have not been doing well, government has come out and found ways. As the minister, you always recommend to cabinet and see how best you can help. So as a shareholder, have you seen this as a way to go? Do you think they need capital to begin working and making some profits? Maybe you'll also tell us how you got your shares, what determined the number of shares that each ministry took. Because when you look at, for example, UTL, you stayed with about 40%, finance took about 60%. What informed how many shares that you should be getting in Uganda Posta? When you look at Uganda Posta, it was demanding the old UTL before it was transformed, some money mainly in rent. But when it was taken over and it went bankrupt, so when they were buying it, the new UTL that is there now, some of this money was left out, majorly the money that they were demanding. So they took over only the assets from the administrator. The liabilities were let go. So some UTL, the old UTL in 2022, when it was taken under receivership, when they were selling the assets, the administrator, the new UTL that is there right now took over only the assets of the old UTL. It did not take over the liabilities. The liabilities stayed with the administrator, the old administrator. But some of the liabilities that this UTL, the new UTL, did not take over, include rent areas to Posta. I don't know if we are on the same page. Now Posta cannot demand the current UTL because the UTL right now does not recognize that it has areas with Posta, because the current UTL right now is as of, I think, January or February 2022. So all the old areas, they do not actually know who to demand, because now on their books they recognize it as rent that they are demanding UTL, but UTL claims that was left with the administrator. For them, they have no debt obligation with the current UTL. So maybe you can give us more information on that. I think those are the few that are taken.
Posts in the region and elsewhere. So it is a very unique investigation. I thought I should start on that positive note. The chair hinted on challenges that would like to hear from you, the government of Uganda and Ugandans as a whole. So what would you like the government of Uganda, and now I'm looking at the government of Uganda in broader terms, the legislature and the executive. Let me save the courts of judicature. From the executive, you are part of the executive, but you know executive makes the proposals in terms of budgets to parliament. So I'm looking at the executive in that context. So what would you like the executive and legislature as broader organs of government to do for you as a shareholder on behalf of the government, so that we can make Posta Uganda better? Maybe that is the question you'll answer last, when you have answered other questions. I can stop there.
Over to you, Honorable Minister.
Chris is in Bukedia, with the president handling the tour of the president, and my other colleague, Honorable Joyce Sebugwao, is also attending to other office matters. I came with the technical officers. They will automatically assist me here and there when it comes to more technical issues. I am happy that you have noted that some of the issues raised need a bit of institutional memory. So whatever we shan't give appropriately, we shall go and dig through and give you the correct information, and more especially issues to do with the data and figures. Those ones we shall, when you are before a committee, you should give correct information. But the issues raised, we shall try as much as possible to shed some light. On first of all, I will start from a positive note, and then shed light on some few others. And the city and the national guidance took over oversight of Posta in 2006. Otherwise, at first, obviously, when Posta was separated from UTL, from telecommunication, Posta went to Ministry of Works at first, then later on to Ministry of Communication, and now it is under Ministry of Information, Communication Technology, and National Guidance. And our responsibilities as shareholders is stipulated in the Articles and Memorandum of Association, which I strongly believe have been given to you.
Before you continue, I don't know if you made some copies for us on the write-up that you're presenting, or that is just your...
I had not made a write-up because the investigation was somehow we are waiting for questions. But I made some introductory,
no, that's fine.
Which I will pass over to you, Chair.
Okay.
Which I will pass over to you. And indeed, our responsibilities as shareholders are stipulated in the Articles and Memorandum of Association, and some of them include appointing the board, attending annual general meetings, and approving the borrowing if there is any request where Posta wants to borrow money, we normally approve, but most of the and obviously doing oversight, but we do our oversight through the board, which has a chair. Chair, Posta is still very, very relevant. Just as Professor said, if I can start from a positive note, very, very relevant. And as a ministry, we have really initiated interventions to make it more relevant, so that they match the current technological advancement. Because Posta now, its biggest problem is now competing with the technology. The traditional postal services have totally changed completely, and therefore they have to match with the current technological advancement. And that's why, as a ministry now, we have developed postcodes for ease of delivery of mail. We now, this issue of going to open the box is now analog. So we have now developed postcodes for ease of delivery of mail. Nowadays we even have electronic box numbers. So if we receive your letter, we don't wait for you to come and open the box. We shall call you, or we shall even deliver it to your address, wherever you are. And we now encourage people to really open up electronic addresses than those addresses which you are familiar with. We have also developed addressing standards for easy delivery of mails to premises. We are working closely with the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, first of all, to name streets and also plot the property, so that you can easily trace where that property is. It has not been easy, and that's why we are working with the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development to ensure we get money for physical planning, mainly in urban centers. But also in the rural areas, there must be good addressing system. Even the roads in the rural areas should have names and well defined. And then under the digital acceleration program, recently Parliament passed a loan under the Uganda Digital Acceleration Program, UDAP. It is money from World Bank. The ministry will establish regional service centers. Now, I think Parliament might be aware that we are establishing what we call Uganda service centers. In Kenya, they call them Huduma centers, but here we call them Huduma. Here we call them Uganda service centers. And what we have done, and these service centers are being now managed by two ministries, Ministry of Public Service and Ministry of ICT. So Ministry of ICT delegated that function to Posta Uganda, and what we have decided is that we shouldn't build centers, new centers. We should use the post office buildings to host those service centers. And some of these service centers are going to work as one-stop centers wherever they are, so that if you want any service, digital service, and probably you don't have a digital gadget, you go to the service center and you operate immediately. We also think with the e-government now, the service centers are very, very crucial. For instance, if someone wants to apply for a passport and doesn't have a gadget, because now application of passport is online, you just go to the service center and apply. And even receiving that passport, you can still receive it through that same service centers using Posta Uganda. So, and URA issues of, because now URA issues of returns, monthly returns, is now digital. So everybody, all people don't have those digital gadgets. So what we do, we think if we have several service centers, mainly in urban centers, and where Posta is using the postal buildings, then we shall try to ease the way of doing business to most of the population who might not have the required digital equipment to access those services. And obviously, under NDP4, the ministry plans to establish other e-government centers in the post office, and that one is one of our proposals. And also, the ministry is trying to finish the development of the national digital addressing system, and this will facilitate door-to-door delivery of services. So we really want the whole nation to be hooked on the digital addressing system, so that even if a house doesn't have a plot number, probably if we know the owner of the house, we feed in the system. And probably if we have a NIN number of the head of the household, we feed in the system. And therefore, if you address a letter and you have addressed it to Professor Mushemeza, where his house has no number, at least somewhere we can trace where he is and deliver the mail to that person. So, in brief, that's what I can give you as a matter of introduction. And Chair, you will allow me to give you this summary. I'm sorry. Exactly. so I have started on a positive note, Professor, so that you don't think everything, because you have really guided, the investigation, so it will be easy for us. Yes, indeed, Chair, we have not yet paid our share capital. And when we took over, there are two ministries which took over this, and Ministry of Finance and Ministry of ICT. And the shares, Ministry of Finance has 60%, and for us as ICT we have 40%. And how did it come about? Is it?
I think that is for your shares in Uganda Telecom, but in Posta, I think you must have about 1 and they have 99. You cross
1%, yeah. I think that is Uganda Telecom. Just 1 share. Now, that came about because at one time, Uganda Posts and Telecommunication was put under privatization, and therefore it went into Ministry of what? Ministry of Finance. Now later, they dropped it from the list of companies to be given out, and so when they separated the two, UTL remained on the list, and then Uganda Posta was dropped from the list. But by that time, because privatization was under Ministry of Finance became the major shareholders. But later, when Posta was dropped from the list, then the ministry responsible for supervision was also given a share. But we have been trying to see how we can change the shareholding percentages. But Chair, when Posta eventually went to Ministry of Finance as shareholders, government as shareholders, we thought we would value assets, and then our shareholding would be the value of what? Of assets. But because we are majority, it also became very tricky. We still needed to push in money to make it really viable. And therefore, we have not yet paid the share capital. In 1998, it was around 5.5 billion and that time the dollar was still at around 1,100 shillings per dollar. So I don't know whether it is still at that, but now we know the dollar is around about 3 times. So you may meet now, if you look at the value of the share capital needed in the UTL, it would be around, say, 15 billion. So it's true, we have not yet paid this share capital, but we have submitted to Ministry of Finance, and Ministry of Finance is the majority shareholder. But we have submitted several times. If you look at our requests in Ministry of Finance, you are members of Parliament, you will see that every year we plan for that, and it's never given. So it is our wish that this committee makes a very strong recommendation that you cannot complain about Posta not performing when you are really not capitalizing it. It is just surviving on whatever business they are doing, and you know that sort of liberalization and separating the two entities caused so many other economic gaps. So we feel Posta should be capitalized, and government, as government, we should pay.
When you make these requests to Ministry of Finance,
They just say there's no money and they keep quiet. Yeah, but if they are written responses,
Maybe on
I'll go
addition,
and I'll look for
you
them.
will share with this committee those written requests.
Yes, yes.
The money for the money as well.
That one we are going to do because we have always proposed. They just keep quiet, and that means they don't have money. Actually, they just keep quiet, and eventually when they are allocating money, we see no money coming. Sometimes even the Parliament has voted for this money, appropriated for money in Parliament, and that money is never released. So we shall give you evidence of all that. And for whether we do checks and balances, yes, we do checks and balances because we receive quarterly reports from the board. They give us quarterly reports, and we normally discuss those reports in senior management, because our expanded senior management includes all MDs of agencies. So we normally discuss quarterly or whatever reports they do. And obviously we also do our oversight functions through the board, which we appoint. We appoint the chair and all the board members. So it's not Ministry of Finance which appoints the board. It is us, but we normally appoint the board in consultation with the Ministry of Finance. But eventually we appoint the board. And
I think on that same issue of appointment, when you look at the current board of Posta, I think 4 of the members on the board are former members of Parliament. Is it just a coincidence that 4 of the members on the board are former members of Parliament? And one of the challenges we've found out so far is that there's been a weakness in the management and board of Posta Uganda.
Yeah, I think one thing is what informed us to appoint them is that they are men and women of integrity. Because being a former member of Parliament doesn't mean you have no integrity, and it doesn't mean you cannot take over any responsibility. But for us, we looked at the experience, the exposure, and then we appoint them. And 2, whenever we are appointing a board, we write to cabinet ministers to make proposals. We don't just select. We normally write to cabinet ministers to make proposals, and they make proposals. But it remains to our discretion to appoint out of the names which have been suggested. And some of the board members are obviously from institutions like Ministry of Finance. We send a representative like that. But I would like to say, former members of Parliament, most of them are men and women of what? Of integrity. They have exposure and they have the experience, and therefore I have no regret for appointing any form of member of Parliament. If there are any weaknesses that you have observed, we shall also address them. And anybody can have a weakness, but we are looking at the positive side. We want to get that positive energy from them as people who have been in Parliament and have exposure. Chair, it's true, we already have information, and we have found out that their license expired.
I think you've skipped on still the board. I brought up an issue concerning their remunerations.
Yeah, the remuneration of the board, it is normally what normally happens, I think it is proposed by the board, and if they give justification that they have money to pay, then the ministry approves. But I will check. You will give me time to cross-check.
So it is the board that requests you to increase their remuneration.
Oh yes, it has to be
and
a
if
proposal
they have
from
the
the
money,
board. Yeah.
then you okay it.
Yes.
Because according to the documents and the financial statements, they have been getting overdrafts. And as I speak, I think the overdraft in the last 2 years alone, it's over 2 billion shillings. And part of this is to pay for their remuneration. So that means they are requesting for an increment without having money. So they are getting more into debts in order to increase their remunerations.
Chair, matters of, they have a budget, and that budget is normally generated by management, approved by the board. And for us as a ministry, so long as they have given us their budget and they have shown that they can pay.
Honorable Minister, you very well know a budget has two sides: income and expenditure. Maybe this is a disease you have, the government has. Several times I've pointed out that we pass an unrealistic budget.
In the UTL, we are shareholders, both of us, and then this Posta. And therefore, it is not a one ministry decision. Yeah, but I will go and look at the documentation, and then I will give you documents, and probably you can dig through and see what informed the decisions. Yeah. Yeah, Chair, it has been brought to our attention by UCC that the license of Posta expired, but we also know that they have been having financial challenges. And we have brought those two organizations together. Chair, there are some issues which are really very complicated to understand, because UCC is a government entity, Posta is a government entity, then say UBC is also what? A government entity. And some of these organizations like Posta, they are even conditions that we even condition them to offer services at subsidized fee, because for them they are public entities. It's like UBC is a public broadcaster, and therefore you can't think of it operating like a purely private organization.
Honorable Minister, you're talking of financial challenges, but maybe you make me understand, because how much are they supposed to pay to get the license? Because the figure I have, I think it's quite manageable. When you look at, for example, the airtime allowance, 93 million, that is in 1 year. If they decided to cut the airtime allowance by maybe half, they would have much more money required for them to pay a license. So when you talk about them having financial hardship, yet their expenses are high, probably they are not just bothered, or they do not care about what is happening.
I strongly believe they are bothered, but those other financials, just as I told you, I will need to dig deep, and then I come back with an appropriate answer. But so far, I know that the biggest problem is financial challenges, but we are also negotiating. We have brought them together, both the UCC and Posta, to see how they can, we can put the mechanism how they should pay for this license. But Chair, you realize even UBC is having challenges. All those government entities which are supposed to be licensed by UCC, they have a bit of challenges. But as government, we are looking for a way of sorting out.
Maybe later when your technical people come in, those who have been there for a very long time, by the time you become a commissioner, it's such a little money, 93 million, on a critical legal requirement. I think you should prepare to answer us later.
Thank you, Chair.
For a license, which is supposed to be a priority, because now they are working outside the law. They are working illegally. And then you have airtime only, airtime allowance, 93 million. If you got 37 for the license from the airtime money, you would remain with a lot of airtime balance. So it is not probably financial. We need to dig deeper, and as a ministry, you need to get concerned and find out what exactly. That is why I asked, what are the other challenges apart from financial? Because when I look at their financials, I think they are okay to be able to pay this license fee.
And Chair, if we dig out,
That will also come in there. But I think at one time you also interact with the Posta. I don't know whether you have. Yes. Then some of those questions, they are going to give appropriate answers. And Chair, if I can go to what other challenges which I think Posta is facing, but my technical officers will also come in at another stage. One is the advancement in technology, because now the traditional role of Posta has totally changed. Because if you can remember, Posta was about delivery of mail. It had a savings, some sort of savings scheme. It was running some postal savings bank sort of savings scheme, and those were the main activities. Later, they added on transport, because they thought buses should not go empty. They should deliver mail, but they should also carry people. But now, with the competing technologies, postal services like delivery of mails, it has now reduced tremendously. That's one way, because people now deliver mails electronically. I don't know when I last received a mail by Posta. But there is also competition from other players. When we liberalized the economy, even mail delivery was liberalized. There are so many other companies which are now in that. Posta eventually, Posta at one time also used to deliver parcels and probably some goods. But now there is a lot of competition. Even these bus service companies like Link, like Global, they now also deliver. They are now in the business of delivering mail and parcels and commodities. So Posta now is facing very high competition, and it being a government entity, government entities, competition becomes very, very difficult, because decision making is bureaucratic. Where a private institution would take 1 hour to take a decision, a government entity takes about 2 days to take a decision. So that bureaucracy is also a big problem. And obviously with the digital services, Posta has not really digitized at a faster rate like other companies which they are competing with. And therefore, there is a need for diversification. That's why we are now going into the digital coding system, digital addressing system, so that we also match with the rest of the companies. And my technical team will add on that. And if I can also comment on why we haven't resolved the assets issue, we are working on this. We have engaged both Posta and UTL. They have been having problems, and those problems stem from the asset sharing when the two companies were separated, and we are working on it with Ministry of Finance and see how we can resolve this, because we don't know why, we don't see why they should even fight. All these assets belong to government, so we don't see why they should really fight. But now that we are trying to get a private investor for UTL, and we have already signed an agreement, we are now fast tracking the issue of asset sharing, and so that we can resolve most of these issues of assets. On the petition, Chair.
Just before you go there, you've got a new investor, and what I think there is going to be a big problem if we are not careful, because if an investor is brought on board before you finalize the issue of assets, then I think we might face a huge challenge, because the investor might have been given a bigger impression, and at the end of it all, when you conclude these assets, it shows that you have less assets as compared to the assets when you bring the investor on board. But then, I don't know, maybe you can give us information, because I'm told this investor is already on board. How many shares is Reward Capital, I think, that is the new investor. How many shares is he taking, and how many are you left with as the ministry as well, and the Ministry of Finance?
Reward Capital is taking, I can't remember offhand, but I will, 2020. 30?
No, finance or record?
Thank you, Chair, Honorable Minister. Ministry of Finance has 24% and ICT 16%.
But, and okay, you'll answer Professor's question. And do you think this will work for us as a country? Because now we are a minority shareholder. What guided this? Maybe you can just give us some highlight on that. Because being a government entity and you give out, at least I expected maybe you would retain 51% and sell 49%.
I really can't answer that. I don't know what guided, but that is what happened. Then why finance took 24 and why we took 16 was that before the investor came, finance had 60% and we had 40. So we just went for rata.
But you see, I don't want to let them off the hook. You know, when senior technical people, before the matter goes to the top management in a ministry, so how wouldn't you know what informs? Because you are the ones who do the research. You are the ones who do comparative studies, what happens elsewhere, and advise top management before top management takes the matter to cabinet. Yes, so how wouldn't you know?
Because
maybe you may not answer
yes,
today.
you know, I think we can let it go at that, but that is a question for thought, probably, because one of the challenges we are facing as a country, when you look at, for example, the Munyonyo issue, government being a minority shareholder, it becomes a problem again. But I think you can maybe give us a highlight in your presentation later on, in your submission to the committee on that, since it's not part of the original issue we are handling.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, there was some discussions. They have raised this issue, and we are trying to revisit the laws, because I think we want even to look at the whole, all the communication laws, and we are coming up with several amendments very soon. And after that, then we shall also look at the regulations, because it's not only Posta, there are other players who have also raised several regulatory issues. But we are coming up with amendments of the communication laws, Some of them want to merge them into one. For us to move with the current trend in technology, because technology changes nearly every day, so we must also look at the laws from time to time. And about I think what we are doing on the changing trends, just as I've told you, we are also matching with the trends. But these trends need the investment. And because Posta is financially constrained, sometimes we can't match with the trends. That's why we want to urge the committee that let government at least also assist us in talking to Ministry of Finance so that we pay our share capital. Because you cannot think Posta will match with the current trends when it is not capitalized. The trends need money, a lot of investment, and because even these service centers, they need a lot of investment to really be operationalized. So we need money to turn around Posta to match with the current trend. For Posta not having bailed out when others are being bailed out, it is also our question, why not Posta? Because we normally submit the request together. We submit a request for Posta, we submit a request for UBC, and then we meet. UBC has been given something, but Posta has not been given. But to make even matters worse, there is a case, an ongoing case, but now it has been resolved. The one of the former East African community workers and the former Uganda Posta and telecommunication workers. At one time, the lawyers recovered the money from Posta, about 2 billion shillings, and later government agreed to pay. Now they are not paying through Posta, they are now paying through the Ministry of ICT and National Guidance. But we have told Ministry of Finance at least to pay Posta that 2 billion which was taken by the lawyers, and up to now they have not paid it. And whenever they give us the money to pay workers, they don't include it, so we can't also pay Posta. So even that is money that can assist Posta at least to do something. So all those are challenges which Posta is getting. I think what determined the share capital, that one we have already talked about it. And then you asked also about the assets when UTL was formed, separated, when the two companies were separated. UTL only took over the assets but didn't take over liabilities. I will find out, Chair, why that happened, unless my technical officers have it, because that's what now we call the institutional memory. We have to dig through. There might have been some agreement, but I strongly believe it was hinged on, because when UTL was going away, we had a joint venture with the Libyans. So I think it might have been around there, that you take over the assets, but the liabilities remain in a company which is still 100% owned by government. But I'll try to look at that. And I've come here to give information so that Posta can be revamped. And that's that whatever we have not answered correctly, we are going to dig for more information, and we are going to submit a written report, Chair, because what the questions will be. But we shall submit a written report so that we also show where we want intervention of Parliament. Chair, allow me through you, I would like the...
Okay, thank you, Chair and members. benefit of the chair, my name is Kenneth Bagarukayo. I'm a Commissioner, Data Networks Engineering in the Ministry of ICT. And
nti ababaka ba parliament kati bagala kuza posta ekitongole kyaffe kya posta ngulu naye kikulu ekitongole kyetaaga sente kubanga gavumenti bwe yakitwala omanyi kati kyali Uganda Post and Telecommunications kati amasimu gagenda gokka then neno posta y'ebbaluwa nayo negenda yokka. Kati ekitongole ky'amasimu nibafuna government nefuna investor bana Libya kati kino ekya posta kyo nikisigala nga kiri mu government naye government yateekamu sente yatwala naye nga tetaddemu ki nga tetaddemu sente ate nga twagala sente zetwali twagala government eteekemu zaali bilioni 15 mu mwaka gwa I think omwaka gwali gwa 1998 awo dola yali ekyali ku 10,000 kati ennaku zino dola eringa ku 3,800 ndowooza kati twagala nga bilioni lulizaali bilioni 5 kati twagala nga bilioni 15 so twagala sente bwe government bwenatuwa sente netuteekamu ekitongole ekyo ekya posta kijja kudda engulu naye kati kikyakola naye kyagala kuteekamu amaanyi nakuteekamu esente ebintu bino ebyokulonda ba board members kati ffe bwe tuba tulonda ba board members minisita awandikira baminisita banne bonna ndi basuggestinga amanya ge balaba nti gayinza kujja ku board kati bwe bamuwandikira ye alondamu amanya gabamuwadde so amanya ge twalonda agasinga nga komiti nga bwegambye ndowooza amanya 4 gali gaba former MPs naye yagala kutegeeza Abannayuganda bonna ndi abali bakulembeze ba parliament nabo Bannayuganda ate nabo balina qualifications z'okugenda ku board ffe kyetunoonya omuntu gwe tuteeka ku kifo ng'ekyo kyetaaga ng'olina obuntu obulamu ng'oli musajja olina integrity ebyokola ng'obitegeera n'obumanyirivu kati ebyo byonna twabinoonya ne tubisangamu abo so ebyokugamba nti former MPs twabateekawo politically not at all basajja nabo baqualifyinga kati kubeera probably akalubwe kakusinga ka parliament tikitegeeza ndi tolina buvunaanyizibwa so twabateekawo kubanga
bitwali twetaaga bali babiina.
For license, lwaki Posta Uganda eri mu cooperating terina license kiva ku ki?
I think kiva ku kasente tu efuna mpola naye ate Posta kitongole kya government na UCC kitongole kya government kati awo ndowooza okay amateeka gagamba nti Posta esasule ki license naye ffe nga government tuyina n'obuyinza kugamba nti Posta tesasula. Kati olaba nge UBC waliwo licenses zitasasula mu UCC kubanga ye national broadcaster so nakyo tuyinza kukituukako ndi kakati Posta zino musasule zino timukola ki timusasula kubanga ye Posta services zaayo tiziri ku market price kubanga eyina obuvunaanyizibwa bulala obw'okusavinga abantu bawaasi ate nga UBC is a national broadcaster buli kimu ekiri ku UBC si kyakusasulira waliwo bwekola emirimu ya government ne Posta bwetyo waliwo bwekola emirimu ya government naye kati Posta obuzibu bweyina competition y'amaanyi kati olaba amabaluwa tigakyatambulira mu Posta kati nze ne box yange maze emyaka 3 sikola ki sijigulawo sijikozesa kubanga kati amabaluwa gatambulira ku digital omuntu akuba ekifaananyi baluwa nakola ki nagiweereza kati ekirala na bus companies mulaba lingi bus global bus kati nazo zitambuza ki mabaluwa ate bo bayina basi zaabwe ezitambuza mabaluwa awalala Posta teyina na motoka ya kutambuza mabaluwa naye ziteeka ku lingi kugende Kasese kugende Lira kubanga teyina motoka ezikola ki ezimala kati competition eyo eri very very high kati twagala Posta tugikole digital kati tutandise digital post office numbers tutukyakolesa zino za box bakuwa eri digital kati gwe ebaluwa yo bwejja tumanye woli tujja kutuusaako nga toze kuki ku Posta oba tukukubira simu ojo ginoneyo then ekirala tutandise ze tuyita Uganda service centers kati ezo Posta Ministry of ICT ne public service zikolagana wamu kati titwagala tuzimbe service center ezo tujja kukozesa ebizimbe byaki ebya Posta kati mu service center ezo ndowooza abamu kumwe abagende Kenya waliyo zibayita huduma kati those huduma centers service centers zijja kukolanga huduma centers zaki eze Kenya kubanga buli kimu kati mu government kiri digital omudide e-passport e-trade e-tax kati abalala abasinga abantu abagala services ezo tibayina gadgets eziyinza kukozesa ebyakalimagezi kubanga gadgets ezikozesa ebyakalimagezi kyetaaga oyina 3G 4G or 5G naye abantu bakyayina 2G kabiriiti akokukuba essimu n'okusindika ki message kati abo batalina gadgets ezo bw'oba oyagala passport ogende mu service center oba ku post office then bakuwe obuyambi obwo then bw'oba oyagala kujjayo passport yo ejja kusanga eri ejja kusangawa gye wa applyingira from so ebyo byonna twagala kubiteekamu amaanyi naye byonna byagala sente so mpadde negayirira aba member of parliament kale bakole okunoonyereza naye recommendation gye twagala nnyo barekomendinge n'amaanyi agasinga nti Posta government gitekemu sente naye etuke ku mutindo gwa DHL n'ebitongole ebirala ebikola emirimu ng'eya Posta. Omanyi kati parliament yesalamu sente kubanga it is the appropriation arm of government kati executive ekola proposal then parliament ekola ki esalamu kati ffe kyetwetaaga bwe tunateekamu ebintu byaffe bwebanga biyise mu cabinet nibijja nibiyita mu parliament then awo tujja kuba tumaze kubanga parliament yekola appropriation yaki yesente
okwongeza emisaala gy'abakozi ba posta nga palamenti webadde kyemulugunyaako nti ate tebalina ssente ate bongeza emisaala gyabwe.
Ekyo nja kukinonyerezaako kubanga siyina bukakafu obumala. Bwentyo bwe mbagambye siyina bukakafu obukola ki obumala, njagenda nkinonyerezeeko oba bayongeza misaala batya, naye ndowooza bwe baba nga bagala kwongeza misaala wayinza kuba nga waliwo ensonga either sente nga bazifunye oba, naye nja kukinonyerezaako.